Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest, and I live here in Austin, Texas. I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. I'm sure that's long before some of you guys were even born. So, so take good care of yourselves. You never know how long your recovery is going to last. So purpose of these podcasts is to really try to go deeper into subjects that don't get covered in much depth at most of the podcasts that I've listened to. But I'm interested in the spirituality, the psychology, the early history of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you like what you're hearing here, please be sure to like, subscribe, and make a donation if you're able. But most of all, tell a friend, because we want this information to get out to as many people as possible. We are now into the third episode of a series that's addressing a subject that should really be of interest both to our female as well as to our male listeners, okay? It's a book titled Out of the Woods, A Woman's Guide to Long-Term Recovery, and I put a link to it in the show notes. And here to lead us in a discussion is the author of that book, Diane Cameron. And in addition to being an author, Diane's a journalist, a columnist, recovery coach, and a woman in long-term recovery herself. So, Diane, welcome back to the podcast.
Bill, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. It's good, really good to have you. And we have two topics that I hope to cover in this episode, chapters that I've taken out of your book. And one is a woman's attendance at 12-step meetings. And the second is some advice and experience you share in the book regarding relationships. And of course, of the two, I suspect meetings is a far easier topic to cover. So let's begin with that one. And you start off pretty traditionally suggesting 90 meetings in 90 days as kind of the go-to. And did you do that yourself? And do you think it's still good advice for women today?
I think it is still great advice for women and men of any age in recovery. Not only did I do 90 and 90, I kept doing 90 and 90 until my sponsor said, okay, like you can add something else to your life now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I was so happy when I landed in 12-step rooms because, one, I felt safe. The quality of laughter in those rooms is something I had never heard before. People would tell stories that somewhere else would be embarrassing or shameful, and the group would laugh, and I could hear the different quality of laughter. They were not laughing at that person. They were laughing with them, because whatever you did, I did too. And so that was so safe and welcoming that I was glad to do it. But I also really believe in 90 and 90 for a couple other reasons. One, you're making a habit. You are teaching yourself immediately. I will go to a meeting every day, which is, as alcoholics and addicts early in our life, we weren't really good at any kind of habit, eating, exercise, money, blah. So we're learning this habit of recovery. And usually the sponsor, the advice is you go every day. And I was thinking about this last night. It teaches you no matter what else is in your life, you can get to a meeting. You have kids, you're going to find the time to go to that meeting. You have a job, you're going to go at 7 a.m. or 5 p.m. You have other responsibilities. You have to take public transportation. You need to figure out how to get to that meeting. So you begin to elevate your recovery.
Do you think it's good to vary the meetings to get a taste of what's available in your community?
And I think that's what 90 and 90 sort of forces us to do, because many meetings are like this Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. And if you're going to go every day, you're going to have to find a Monday meeting and a Sunday meeting. Now, later in my recovery, I went to the same meeting every day because that had its benefit of hearing the story, hearing, what somebody shared. But that 90 and 90, it like gets you on a fast track. And if you have anything competitive in your body, and many of us do, it's like, because that's what I was like, I'm going to do this. That's what they say you should do. Like, watch this. I'm going to do this 90 and 90, as if it was a contest. But it was that character defect that turned out to be helpful.
Well, our character defects, God puts them to good use, I think.
Yes, he does.
You were faced with a number of addictions when you came in. Any advice regarding that?
Most of us have stuff earlier in our life. Something precedes alcohol in most cases, because when we're kids, alcohol is not generally not available to us. So I always say, I did with candy as a kid what I later did with alcohol. I hid it. I stole it. I wouldn't share mine with you. I lied about it because it was helping me manage my feelings. People do that with food. I did it with food. We do it with exercise. And then we do it with some substance that creates bigger problems or takes us down faster. And we come into 12-step rooms for that substance. But we still got this other stuff going on. So when I came in, I had food addiction. I had, Lord knows, I had relationship problems, right?
Right.
You could say I had an addiction.
That's almost a given, isn't it?
Oh, it is, because that's what we don't know how to do, our relationships, period.
Right.
And for many women, men too, but for many women, it's like, if I get a boyfriend, I will be fixed. This is the heartbreaking part. If somebody loves me, I will be fixed. Yeah. So we do that. We seek out relationships. We seek out boyfriends, later husbands, because we want to fill the hole that's in us. So it's going to show up in the rooms. Right. That's why the great advice, whoever said it early on, is like, ladies, stick with the ladies, and men, stick with the men. For the most part, let's keep that issue calm and outside the room.
If it's available, that would be your advice, would it not? Yeah. Women try to go to primarily women's groups, or at least find one of those groups.
Right. Or if you're in a mixed meeting, sit with the ladies, because they're going to the ladies with more experience, whether it's age or not. They're going to say, like, honey, pay attention to this. They always say honey, right? So they're going to say, like, they'll tell you when to raise your hand. They'll tell you when to not raise your hand. They'll say, you've been talking a lot lately. Why don't you listen a little bit?
Good advice. How long do you think a woman needs to go to meetings? And I guess what I'm asking here is, can we become too dependent on meeting attendance? I had a sponsor who said in early recovery, said this to me. He said, if AA were to go away, he believed he could stay sober. He would stay sober because eventually he put his dependence onto God. And I think it took me some years to understand what the guy was trying to tell me. But I think he had a good point.
I think it is a good point. And also the history of AA bears this up, because as they say in the big book, as World War II arrived, there was great concern. Would these people stay sober when there were not meetings available? And if they were committed to the program and to God or a higher power, that's what the work was. But the other thing that I think it's important to keep some meetings in your life, no matter how long you're sober, because the other thing that's in there is community. And we know we all need community. Right now, there's this epidemic of loneliness. There's this epidemic of isolation, especially in aging communities. And it's like, those of us who are in 12-step programs some people have church, right? Church meets that need. But if you don't have that, 12-step programs are community, and you can have that, right? So maybe you don't need to keep doing 90 and 90. You don't keep going.
Hopefully not.
To the same meeting. You're becoming the boring old timer. I think that's also important when you're in recovery a long time. It may be time to change up your meetings. Go and hear what the younger people have to say. Go and hear what the newer people have to say, and let that inform your growth.
I read this when I was 20 years sober, when I got into the history of AA, and I came across, you're probably familiar with that Frank Amos report. He was sent out by Rockefeller to study this new movement, see what's going on here, bring back a report, and tell me why this thing is working. And when he brought back the report, this shocked the hell out of me. But it said meetings were helpful to these people. But morning quiet time, prayer and meditation, they were vital.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a total flip of that.
I think we need to hear that over and over now. Yes.
Yeah, we've made the meetings the touchstone of everything.
Right.
And prayer and meditation, it's really nice if you can do it.
Exactly.
But we've lost touch. And I think that's one of the things that is, AA has kind of stopped growing. It hit its heyday in the 90s when, for a number of reasons. We'll get into that. But if it's going to grow, because I've worked with a lot of young people who say, it's the same old boring stuff.
Right.
And if you can teach people to go inside, it ain't boring.
Anything but boring, right.
Anything but boring. Challenging, yes.
Right. You're absolutely right, because we have this slogans and things like meeting makers make it, which makes it, if you're going to the meeting to learn how to do step 11, that's a good thing.
Right.
We forget why we're sitting in those chairs.
Right. And we got to be sitting in that morning chair too.
Right. Right. And maybe talking about that in the meeting to remind others, did you have your quiet time today?
Without preaching.
Yes. That's tricky. That's a tricky prescription.
Addicts don't respond well to preaching. Trust me. You had the experience meeting-wise of moving from one part of the country to another. Some issues you faced. Share that with our listeners.
I would say, and I've had a lot of things happen to me in recovery. My siblings have died. My parents have died. Divorce. Really, really hard things. The hardest thing I have done in recovery was change cities. When I moved from Baltimore, where I got sober, to upstate New York, it was it was culture shock, but it was also recovery shock because in EA, in 15 years, I had gotten sort of familiar and people familiar with me. We knew each other's stories.
This is the way we do it.
This is the way we do it. And I could only, I could refer to part of my story. People would laugh. They knew my jokes. I knew their jokes. It was very familiar. We had our breakfast. When I came to upstate New York, I didn't know why that was such and such was your nickname. They didn't know my jokes or my approach. They did. The meetings different. Oh my God. And I remember that in Baltimore when people would come from out of town and be like, oh, what are they doing? What I learned was I had to be I had to treat myself like a newcomer. 90 and 90. I had to do 90 and 90 in my
You started that over again.
In my new city. So I would meet people. So I would go places. I had to do service. It was like, get a service job. Call, pick up that phone had gotten very heavy in a new town. So, again, meet some women, make some calls, and get a sponsor in my new town. Don't keep calling back to Baltimore. Get a sponsor in my new town.
Make the transition.
It was the hardest 2 years of my recovery.
Wow.
Right? Because people said different things. Their sayings were different. They read different literature a little bit. And it was like, be here now. I had to really be here.
Yeah, beginner's mind, the Buddhists would say, hey?
Yeah. So when people from out of town show up here, I go right up to them and I say, you don't know it yet, but this is going to be hard. And here's some tips to meet us, to fit in.
You mentioned in this chapter the concept of a recovery team to support you. Could you go into that a little more detail?
I think for everybody, it'll look different. For me, it was surrounding myself with women in recovery, especially women of different ages. So that it can kind of happen with sponsors and sponsees who get some women of different ages around you. I am also a great believer in outside help. I've found that therapy a lot for recovery. That becomes part of my team. Having sponsors for certain things also was very helpful.
That's what Wilson did.
And I didn't know that for the longest time that he did that. Because I remember there was a time when I was very focused on career and how is this going to work and, what's God's will for my career versus my ego's will. And that's when lots of people were sorting out in recovery. So I had as a sponsor a woman who seemed to be successful and sane in her career and in recovery. To say to her, how do you do this? She was brilliant. How do I supervise other people as I began to move into positions at work where I was supervising other people?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that as a sober woman with integrity? And I needed women who had struggled through being the bossy boss and then learning to be a supportive supervisor.
Right. Yeah. And to expect anyone to have all the areas that you need help with is pretty unrealistic.
Right. I mean, because it's rare that we're growing at the same pace. Because I'll hear people say, Susan has been my sponsor for 40 years. And it's like, I hope you and Susan are growing at the same pace, because otherwise she's holding you back.
Talk a little more about that.
If you are ambitious in recovery, if you want, as I said before, the whole enchilada, then I want to be around people who also want emotional growth, spiritual growth, whatever is relational growth. They want to have a good relationship. They want this marriage to be a good one.
Right.
Choose the sponsor who has been on that path, who has done that too. So she can say, here's the mistakes I made. Here's what you might try. Here's the outside work you might want to do while you're at that. I also read about being a stepmother. Have a sponsor who is a stepmother so she can tell you the mistakes you're likely to make.
I guess where I struggle, and I wish we had another name for it, I get hung up on the sponsor word.
It sounds all or nothing, yes.
I don't like it. I think you need a sponsor in the beginning. And I think that's what it was designed to be there for.
Right.
Someone to sponsor you. You say, I'm going to help this woman or this man
Right.
and vouch for them and bring them in. And that's what they even used to pay for your hospitalization.
Wow.
I mean, that's what they would do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're serious about this thing. But after a while, and that, I mean, in my case, was 20 some odd years. So
Right.
it's not like I'm shortcutting the deal. I did come to that time when I was more in need of a spiritual director.
Yep.
And I was more in need of someone who had done inner child work, and someone who had done family of origin work, and somebody who had dealt with other addictions that perhaps the guy who was sponsoring me never got close to touching.
It's very rare to find all that in one person.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And unrealistic. And I think that's the thing.
It'd be really interesting to play with that and kind of have a different name. Because I think, too, you want that. I think of sponsorship, it's very likely. I think of sponsor like in Kiwanis or Elks or, those groups, like somebody sponsors you in. Like, this is Diane and she can join the Chamber of Commerce. I think she's a good gal, right? And then they send you into the meeting to get to know people.
And that's, I think, the way it started.
Yeah.
That if you study the history, that it was more in line with that than it was, would you be the image of God for me?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And I think a really, really good sponsor, and this would be somebody with pretty healthy recovery, they would say to you, oh, you're going through a divorce. I've never done that. I think you need to go talk to Mary. She's been through it. And she's got a lot of wisdom about it. Go talk to her.
That's healthy. That's healthy. Yeah. And then that leads you more into, finding your own way in recovery and keeping it interesting and growing up. I think you can stay awfully immature in a 12-step program if you don't know your way around.
Right.
So, yeah, that's been my experience. Okay, Diane, it's time now to head back to the parking lot. And we want to talk about the R word, relationships. And you say they're particularly tricky territory for recovering people. Just in general, I guess, for men and women.
Yes, absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
I think sometimes we hear this in recovery, but personally we forget it. That when we're coming into recovery, the saying is, you stopped developing at the age you started picking up drugs or alcohol. So if you used your first drugs or alcohol at 15 and you're getting sober at 45, you're 15. And you're going to approach relationships the way you did when you were a teenager, same as if you were 20 years old. So that's the person who's in here beginning, entering their recovery and now beginning relationships. And I think it's important to remember relationships, we think of them right away, romantic relationships, but it also means friendships. It means workplace relationships. Yeah. It means neighbors, all that stuff. But who we are, what age are we emotionally as we're entering them and having some consideration for that. And then to also remember when we were using drugs or alcohol or whatever our addictive substance or behavior, it was keeping feelings down. It was keeping fear, anger, abandonment, whatever that probably childhood stuff was. It was keeping it away, take that substance away, and here comes all that stuff to the surface. And now we're meeting somebody new. They're going to be sort of the victim of all of our stuff. We want them to be the new drug. We want that relationship person to be the new fix in my life. Fix my fear, fix my abandonment, fix the hole in my heart, fix all that stuff. So we're not at our best when we enter relationships. And probably we don't have the skills to negotiate difficult relationships. Because most of us, I would say most of us, came from families that weren't particularly great at relationships. We didn't see a lot of role models. There are those rare people who in recovery who say, I came from the perfect family and this anomaly of addiction happened. Well, that's rare, right? Something happened somewhere, or you wouldn't have needed a fix. We enter relationships like Jung talks about this. We're bringing all this stuff with us. Most of the psychological writers, we've got all this baggage. We've got a bag on our back, and it's like, hi, meet me and all my issues, and please fix them. We don't say it out loud because we're very seductive.
And we're not really aware of them.
We aren't. We don't know we're doing that, right?
Right.
But that's where our hopes are coming from, right?
Yeah.
If this person will love me and fix me and take care of me, and little girl think I'm pretty, and I'm going to become dependent on that, right? And then if this is somebody who's doing their own growing, they want to mature, they want to grow, they don't want to be the caretaker and the supporter always, 24/7. So then that's going to feel threatening. As that person begins to grow in a relationship, if we're not growing too, we're going to be threatened by their growth because it's going to look like abandonment. It's going to look like they withdrew something from us. Don't try this at home alone, right? That is tricky stuff to negotiate. You need really good friends, a therapist, and good people in recovery to help you do that. But I think that's what addiction is all about. It's about It's about not being so good at relationships. Therefore, I'll use some substance.
Right. And I'll change from this substance to that substance.
Right. The thing for women too is and this is cultural as well as addiction. It's like, I'll change me. If you like this kind of person or woman, I'll try to be her. I'll try to be this kind of person. And I lose myself completely in it. The wisdom, which all of us say it, 2 of us do it, no relationships in the first year. But
let's talk about the woman who's coming into the program, got an alcohol or drug problem, probably, or eating, whatever the physical addiction might be. So what advice, relationship-wise, would you give to her, which is going to be different from a person who's in the program for some time? So let's take those 2 categories.
In a funny way, 90-90 plays up to this because it's like you want that woman to stay busy. Don't start dating. So let's go to meetings. Let's go to meetings with other women. Let's keep you busy for a while until this recovery thing can soak into you a little bit. Because women joke about this, but it's really true. They come into the first couple of AA meetings and they're looking around the room like, who's here? Who's here? And it's like being at a wedding with alcohol. They're like, you're counting other people's drinks. You're looking at the alcohol. You're looking at the bar. Well, you come into a room and there's men in there and you're like, oh, how about him? Oh, how about him? Oh, how about him? So it's a danger. You're very vulnerable, right? You're very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable. That's the key issue. And you need to know that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You need to know that. And I think that's one of the reasons why women's meetings are really important, because other women, they're going to joke about it. Because there's a part of it that's funny. There's also a part of it that's tragic. But they're going to say, now, sit with me when we go to the meeting. Don't go sit on the other side of the room where the men are sitting.
Yeah. Yeah. So for a woman now who's got some time in recovery, it's time to venture out a bit, eh?
It's time to venture out. And again, whatever age that is, probably younger, whether as a teenager or a young adult, we didn't do relationships really well. I mean, one of the things, Terry Gorski, who is a writer in recovery,
I know Terry.
He wrote about dating. How do you date in recovery? Well, you know how addicts date? They go out to the movies and they call the U-Haul, right? They're moving in. This is like, we're together now. We're in love. It's immediate. It's fast. And he said that the challenge for people in recovery is to learn, go out to the movies, go home, say, thank you, I had a nice time, and go on a date with someone else, which is like mind-blowing.
That's foreign.
Mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
That I could go on a date and not owe you something, right, for that date. And that I can stay present and clear-headed to look at who's in front of me. How does this guy treat the waitstaff? How does this guy treat me on the date? How does he talk about his family? I need some information about this person if I'm going to go on date 3, 4, 5. We usually don't give ourselves that, right? Our neediness gets in the way from our even paying attention to that date in front of us. I mean, that was such a shock to me that you're allowed to assess the person you're on a date with and say, is he sane? Is he healthy? Is he financially solvent? Is he working on himself? That's the biggie, right? Is this a person who has an inner life that he's aware of, that he can tell you about?
In this chapter, you say, most women have relationship problems because they lie to themselves. So when a relationship goes south, the author then encourages a woman to ask herself, what red flag did I choose to ignore?
Right. This is something I've heard. A therapist said this to me ages ago, and it was like, finally turned out to be true. She said, in the beginning of a relationship, what the issue will be at the end of the relationship. If you look back, you'll remember that in that first or second or third date, if there were dates, some behavior or something that person said that sent a little red flag up, and then you went, oh, but he's a nice guy. Oh, but I want him. This is now my drug. So it's like, I'm going to look past that. I'm going to look past that. The big ones for me, and I say this to younger women, if a man is telling you how much he hated his former girlfriend or his ex-wife, if he is really deprecating other women, run for the blanking hills, because you will be that woman someday.
They're going to be the exception.
I'm going to fix him. I'm going to help him.
I'm going to fix him, change him.
That's right. And he's going to love me and thank me for it. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Until he kills me wants to kill me anyway.
One way or the other. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the other thing that presupposes is you need to be clear enough of whatever your substance is so that you can feel those flags when they're happening. That something inside of you goes, uh-oh, he was really rude to the wait staff. What is that about? Simple question. What is that about? What is that about? Why is his behavior that way? And is that the kind of person I want to be around? Again, you don't have to say this to the person in the restaurant, but just like, okay, duly noted, pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we've got to be clear of our substance in order, and not terribly not needing his approval, because that's also going to get in the way of our clarity, right? And so that's a lot of work. All those things are a lot of work on a date.
Right. And that's why I think it does take 40, 50 years to work out some of these kind of problems that we bring. I like that. I don't think I'd heard that before. So whatever issues you're bringing after a long time in the relationship, you're going to be dealing with the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a control freak. My wife hates to be controlled. It's a marriage made in heaven. So we're still working on it. We're still working it.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Now you're a control freak, and you're not just right.
I got a hint of it around 30 years, 30 years in, started to dawn on me.
Because I think that's the other beautiful thing in recovery is we don't become completely different people. We're not getting personality transplants. We're becoming aware of, let's use that jargon, character defects, characteristics. And then we decide, do I want to soften that one? Do I want to give that one up in certain places? I mean, there are places we want control freaks. We want surgeons and airline pilots to be control freaks, to be perfectionists, right? We want that.
Right.
If you're in daycare, maybe you want to soften that one a little bit.
Right. Some of those eye surgeons and stuff, they should go work in daycare for a while. Soften it up. And not the other way around. I don't know that.
Yeah, we don't want the daycare kids flying the plane.
No, I don't think so. You got a wonderful section that I think is really important. You title it subsection, how much together, how much apart. There's a melding that people look for, and it's not healthy.
Right. And I think it's one of those things that certainly is negotiable in a relationship. A healthy relationship, and lots has been written about this, needs an amount of it. You need intimacy, and you need autonomy. You need to come together, and you need to safely and lovingly be able to come apart and not blame the other person. You're pulling away, you're distancing. It's like, now it's healthy for us to be apart. Now it's healthy for us to be together. And this was one of those moments in probably maybe a year 10 or so. I was in therapy and I was trying to date. And so I had learned the word boundaries, and boy, did I want boundaries. Boundary. And I remember the therapist saying to me, Diane, boundaries are permeable. There are times when you come together and you come apart, and you come together, and that's the good thing, the juicy, lovey thing. And then you move apart, and you let the other person move apart. But there should be a flow back and forth. Mind-blowing concept to me, because I was like, whoa, stand back. This is me. That's you. Which is very adolescent in a way.
Right. Yeah. We're going to become one.
Yeah. This is the tricky part in marriage is you need two people who kind of know themselves pretty well, so they can say to the other person, I'm an introvert. So on Friday nights, I would really like it if either we came home or I came home by myself. You're a big extrovert. You go out with those folks after work.
Right.
I won't be jealous of that. I won't
Right.
punish you for that. And you'll come home and say, how was your book? How was your movie? You know,
Right.
and we'll appreciate that about each other instead of trying to change the other person.
That's so important and
Yeah.
so difficult to learn, but not
Right.
impossible. Not impossible.
Right.
Not
But I think that's
impossible.
coming out of the work of recovery. It's not just, it is not just not drinking. It's not just not
Right.
using. It is
Right.
learning about who's that person that wanted to drink? Who's that person that wanted to overeat? How are they growing? Before you put them in a room with another person who's trying to grow too. It's really hard work.
I was encouraged to go to Alanon in my early days of recovery. I think we've lost sight of that somewhat today. Not everybody, but it's a whole different area that you're going to need to be working on. It's this
Yes.
relationship thing.
Right. Right. I say to people all the time, because I went to Alanon, I went to Adult Children of Alcoholics, because I
Yeah.
definitely had that family stuff, child work to work through. And I still hear in AA, people are afraid of Alanon. And it's kind of the old stereotype. Today, more than half the meeting is either double winners who are in both programs,
Yeah.
people who have been in recovery a long time. They're not interested in punishing for alcoholism. They're interested in growing as a person. And I think if you're beginning to date, as soon as you have children, you need to be an Al-Anon. It's a great parenting help for sure, to learn about that relationship.
Alanon talks about the railroad tracks, the rails, and the ties. You're familiar with that?
Not completely.
Okay, so
Say that.
let's say in a marriage, one person is this rail, the other person is that rail. The tendency is to want to bring them together, which is a train wreck, but you have the ties that link them together. It's a lovely analogy
It's
or metaphor.
beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. But each person needs to have his or her own relationship with God, with the group, growing, as you're saying, and then you're able to relate without demanding that other person be for you the things that you're lacking in your life.
Right.
All of them.
That is a great image, because that idea of the tracks coming together, that's very adolescent, going steady. We're together every time. We do our homework together. We love each other so much. We're always together. You're right. That's a train wreck. Don't marry that person.
Yeah, yeah. Or recognize that you are that person, and each one needs his or her own recovery plan.
Right. And his or her own life, because I'm thinking too, that's another, there's so many side benefits in 12-step programs, but one of them is, the nature of the fellowship is teaching you how to have a life. People invite you to breakfast or lunch or coffee, and you learn how to do that. You learn how to go out with a group and balance that getting to know you. That was the other thing. I can't remember. Maybe it's Gorsuch that talks about it. Like, we're told rigorous honesty. Well, you don't do rigorous honesty on a first date. That is not the time to share your alcoholic child story, but many people do. They're sharing their abuse story while they're dating somebody. And it's like, that's for another time. That's over a long period of time, because you've got to check this person out first. We have to learn how to be with people.
Right. You say marriage is an art, and the purpose of marriage is to find the right person to force you to individuate. Now, this is a Jungian term. And the goal of marriage is not happiness, but individuation. I think that's what we've started talking about here, but talk a little bit more about that from what you say in the book.
That is also one of those things that was so totally mind-blowing, right? I'm not marrying this person to be happy. There's happiness in it, of course, and there's romance in it, of course, but that's not the purpose. I'm going to choose the person who is going to support me enough in my growth, challenge me to the right degree over time in my growth, because we've done both ends of that continuum. The person who challenges you all the time is not healthy, and the person who doesn't challenge you at all is not healthy. But sometimes, we're attracted to that person because I don't want to be bugged. I don't want to be poked and,
Right.
prodded. So you need to find that. And then once you're in a committed relationship, and I'm thinking, I've heard people say this in their vows these days, that part of their vow is to help the other person grow,
Mm-hmm.
not to be like me, but to be like you. I will be committed to helping you be like you, which to some degree, for certain people, that's going to be really threatening to watch their partner grow. Because we don't grow exactly at the same pace, but maybe lockstep, like I'll grow a little and you'll grow a little and I'll go in this direction, you'll go in that direction. But we'll come back together and say, and how is that for you? How is that to do that work? How is that to, a friend of mine, what is her, Ellen Friedman, she talks about this when married people have kind of different interests and different things. And she said, imagine that you're arriving at the bottom of a building as a married couple. And one of you just loves to exercise. It's going to take the steps, going to take 40 flights of steps to the roof, and the other one wants to take the elevator. And she said, there's no right or wrong. You each get up there, and then you share the view. How was it for you to run up all those stairs? How nice was your ride in the elevator? But we're committed to coming together and saying, gee, in therapy yesterday, I learned this, or, I'm going through something at work. Here's what I'm learning about me. And the stereotype is, it's a very stereotypical. The husband comes home, says there's an issue at work, and the wife tells him exactly how to handle that issue at work. Well, you need to tell them, you need to tell him, which isn't letting that person grow.
Yeah.
So that's why, marriage is it took me years and a couple of marriages to get to this point of saying, this is a collaboration. That's why it's a work of art. It is a collaboration. And any collaboration is risky, right? One person may go so far to the left that I'm going to get nervous, but I need to have the skills to say, I know that's important to you, but I'm getting a little bit nervous. Like, can we check in? Can we check in?
Right. Yeah. Or check out, which is another section, again, back to the parking lot, the question of adultery in marriage. I haven't checked the latest statistics, but it's disturbingly high.
It's very high. Yeah.
It's very high. It's so threatening. Talk about it. What does a woman need to know about that issue?
Maybe not 100%, but a lot of adultery is happening because, one, people don't know themselves well enough to be able to say to the person they're married to, I'm not feeling great in this. I feel like we're missing something, or we're drifting, or here's a risk to say, I can feel myself drifting in this marriage. I want to find out what's happened between us.
Boy, that's less threatening an approach, isn't it?
It is.
Very nice. Yeah.
Right.
Remember that, listeners.
Yeah. Because we know that when people have affairs, they're getting needs met. They go into affairs to get their needs for romance, for affiliation, something sexual, but something is missing, and they're going in the wrong direction to get the need met. Because again, they haven't looked carefully at the person they're now getting involved with. But they're in a backhanded way. They're trying to get some need met, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. It's hurting themselves.
Yeah.
And it would be easier to have the difficult conversations with the person they're married to, for the most part, right? Sometimes, now here's a tricky thing. We have people in recovery who got married very quickly, and that probably isn't the person they should be with. There probably were issues from the start that it wasn't the right relationship, and maybe that needs to come apart. But wouldn't it be better if they had a healthy divorce? Wouldn't it be better if they sat down and say, boy, we did the best we can. We tried really hard. I respect who you are as a person. Let's try this in a different way, as opposed to go out and have an affair, which now nobody's going to know what their own issues are, because that's going to be so dramatic and so over the top, right? And if you have children, then lots of people are going to get hurt.
You talk also about having an emotional affair, not a physical one. It's not acted out, but it's not acted upon, but it is acted out, I guess. Yeah. Talk about that.
Well, we see this in workplaces, right? We hear about like my work husband, my work wife, and they may be very good friends. They probably are very good friends, but you want to be. This is where boundaries are really important. I've heard someone talk about this. She said, you'll know that you're in danger zone if you're telling your work spouse things you didn't tell your real spouse. Do they know more about you? Are you sharing your fears and feelings with them and not at home? Because now, there's our intimacy. You're drifting into intimacy with another person.
Yes.
Right. It's kind of like relapse. Before you pick up a drink, a whole lot of other things happen.
Right.
And like with affairs, a whole lot of other things happen before you went to bed with somebody, right?
Yeah.
You began to keep secrets. You began to share with them more than you share with your spouse. You start giving them more time than you're giving your spouse. You have your own sense of humor. You have your own language with that friend. And then
watch your fantasies. Watch the fantasy that's going on.
Right. And to be, I mean, that's a tricky one, to be a person who is well enough aware of themselves to say, ooh, what does that mean that I'm fantasizing about Sue at work? I got to,
right.
Stay on the other side of the office for a week.
Yeah.
Or find out, like, why am I attracted to her? She looks like she's fun. Maybe I don't have enough fun in my life. I got to go get some fun.
Right.
Whatever that's telling you. But think about the amount of self-examination that requires of a human being. To say,
well, that's where step 10 is so important, and it's deeper than we think. It's watching deeper for these kinds of things that are going on.
Right.
What's disturbing my relationship at home, at work, with myself, with God.
What are those little, I call them the wiggly thoughts, like what little thoughts were wiggling in my head today? Like some fantasy about another person. Well, I mean, fantasies aren't bad on their own, but we might say, I don't know what that's about. And you want to write it down. So you have a record that you thought it, right?
Right.
So you write it down. And if you're writing it down every day, I go, oh, there's a pattern here. I better pay attention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Step 10, it's huge. It's huge. And it's an art. It's an art.
And I know a lot of people, they write in their notebook at night. I write in the morning because I'm tired.
Me too. I can't do it at night.
I do examine step 10 in the morning. And I think about the day before, the highs and the lows and where was God? Where was God in that day yesterday? And let them come to me. But I know a lot of people will say, well, I do step 10. I do it in my head. Well, your head's the issue. Right? So it may not, to give it, respect the process enough to give it some time in your day, as a recovery step.
Same-sex relationships from the women's perspective. Let's try to cover that because you do go into it in the book. Yeah,
and I've seen this happen in these 40 plus years of recovery. That and maybe the most common one. I can think of a particular person who said, I knew that here and there, as younger in my life, I was attracted to women, but it wasn't okay because of maybe my family, my religion, whatever. So I brush that thought away. And I was using food, drugs, alcohol, so it was easy to push that away. And then I'm getting sober. I'm getting in recovery. I want to become a better person. I'm now employed and whatever. So the next step is to marry a nice man, because that's the cultural stereotype of a successful woman's life. I'm going to marry a nice man. There's a nice man, so I marry him. But this other part of me isn't going away. And this is heartbreaking in a way, because here's a marriage where they didn't know quite what was going on in the beginning. But the longer she's sober and the less substances she's using or behaviors, as those thoughts are coming up, they're going to come if they're true, if they're essentially a part of her, they're going to come to the surface.
Well, this can be looked at as shadow stuff.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
With this particular woman, the example she gave, which I loved it. She talked about, she was searching with this and she was struggling with this, and she was out of town at a recovery conference, and the speaker said from the podium, you'll never see, to the women in the audience, you'll never see me again. You don't know me. I don't know you. If you have a secret, come up to me and tell me, say out loud, whatever that secret is, something you did a long time ago. And this woman went up to her and she said, I think I'm gay. I think I'm a lesbian. And she was like, okay, find out if that's your truth. But she said it, when she said it out loud, she heard herself say it. And again, as a person in recovery with some integrity, then she was able to go back to her husband, maybe in therapy, and say, I think this is my truth. Yeah. Now, how do we handle our family?
Right.
In the most decent way possible.
Which doesn't mean you have to necessarily act on it. To me, this is where the guidance piece is so critical. And we've lost that, you know, to take it to prayer, take it to God, you know, and, you know, am I listening to stuff I was taught when I, you know, was 15 years old, versus where I am now? Can God be leading me in this direction, in that direction? Discernment of spirits.
Right.
It's so important.
Right.
Yeah.
And sorting out all of this stuff. I mean, sexuality is such, it's like, it's
loaded.
It's
loaded.
It's rich. It's loaded. And we know now, thank you, Kinsey, it's a continuum. It's not black or white. It's not this or that. So I may have these feelings, I have those feelings. Maybe I experimented, maybe I didn't. We do get to decide. But there's so much, there's more gray there than black and white. Right?
That's the point I wanted to hear. Yeah, because it's not that, I've discovered this, now I've got to go run off and act on it. Not necessarily.
Right.
Not necessarily. I wanted to murder a few people, you know?
You thank God you didn't.
And I had to own that, you know?
Right.
Doesn't mean, well, let's go for it, Charlie.
Right. Well,
but I got to own it.
It makes me think of another great, she's a writer and she writes about recovery, Anne Lamott.
She's great.
She says her first book, it's called Operating Instructions. I always give it to people when they're here for baby showers because it's the journal of her pregnancy and her son's birth. And she talked in that book about the evil thoughts that she had about her baby. You know, she said it was colicky and she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. She's exhausted. She's a single mom. And she said, I thought seriously about taking him outside, putting him in the car, and leaving him there overnight. And she said, because I was in recovery, I called somebody and I told them that. And they were like, well, don't do that. But hold on, I'm going to come over and rock the baby for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what a stressful time.
Right. I had an experience of that many years ago with my daughter. And I had taken her somewhere, and it was the first time I had charge of her. And she woke me up 5 times crying.
Oh.
And the 5th time, I got in touch with a rage inside of me that wanted to kill her. Now, I've got enough control, you know, that I didn't. But I tell you this, I had to own that that's what was going on. Dark as that may be.
Absolutely.
And then I had a lot more compassion on people who may not have as much control as I have.
Absolutely.
I have compassion for those people.
I think it is so important. This is why I love the Lamont story. I love what you're saying. Is because parents need to hear this. Because they may have one of those thoughts and be so ashamed of their own thought. They're the only person in the world who ever thought of hurting their own child. When it turns out to be a very common thing, especially, you know, you're exhausted, you're sleep deprived, you're angry, the baby's crying, you don't have a helper. Make it go away.
Yeah. Next section you cover in the book, Diane, is I like the subtitle: Little Kids, Big Kids, His Kids, New Kids. What's going on there?
Okay, so again, we have relationships. We have, you know, stereotypically, we have the couple, their relationship, which they're figuring out and working. And then you're going to add in children, either children that you're going to have together, you're going to raise them, to recovering alcoholic parents or one recovering alcoholic parent. And maybe one or both of you had children before. So now we have the blended family, which on the surface, the made-for-TV version is very sweet, right?
Lovely.
The kids get along, they share bedrooms. On the TV version, there's enough money to do anything
Until you
want.
read
So,
about them 20 years later, what
yes,
happened. Yeah.
until they're screaming in therapy. But the tricky part is now, one of the things, and I experienced some of this, is again, back to like before you got into recovery, your own childhood stuff. If you felt that you didn't have enough love, you didn't have enough support, you didn't have enough attention, whatever those gaps were in your own upbringing, you're bringing that forward. So
Right.
now you're in a relationship with someone who has children. And like, in a way, like the worst possible scenario, they're trying to be a good parent. They're trying to give their children love and attention and support. And you're watching this. It is going to trigger something in you that is so painful. And
Yeah.
if you don't know what is going to be being triggered, you're going to be a step monster because you're going to immediately become jealous of children, which
Mm-hmm.
is also, you feel, you know you're doing it. It's shameful. You don't know why you're doing it because you haven't done your inner child work yet, right? But you're mad that he's spending Saturday with them. You're mad that he's spending money on them or she's spending money on them. All your character defects are being triggered, right? And you're
Yeah.
going to justify it because now you're an adult. So you've got some language. So you're going to be like, you shouldn't be that kind of parent. You shouldn't give them this and that. And what's really happening is your inner child is going crazy and deals some other kid is being loved and I wasn't, and that wasn't fair. So here's a place for outside help. Here's a place for some other women in recovery who are parents and step parents to talk about this stuff. And this may also be, we were talking about how we keep secret when we have like bad thoughts or bad feelings. It's like we can have those in with our kids, and with stepchildren as well.
Yeah.
And then the terrible thing is the layer of shame on top of that, right? So you want to be able to talk about it till you get to the point of laughing about it. And then that art of collaboration in the marriage to be able to say to your partner, I think there's a young part of me that's kind of jealous in the situation. And I'm jealous of your kids, even though I know they're pretty decent kids. I want you to know this is my stuff and I know it, but we need to work it out. And that's a tricky one. What is mine and what is ours?
Yeah.
How do I help you be a really good parent and take care of the feelings that triggers in me? That's complicated stuff.
It's
That
very
takes years.
complicated.
Yeah,
This is where the family systems work, I think, is really, really helpful.
it's really helpful.
You know.
And then one of the things, this is something else I was thinking about when we were talking about relationships is, you get into recovery, Alanon, whatever, and you're kind of told you need to work on your relationship. Well, if you are at all a competitive person like I am going to work on this. I am going to lay it down on the ground and pound it with a hammer. I am going to do so much work on this relationship. And I remember a therapist saying to me, yes, one does need to work on a relationship, but not 90%. You work 20% and you have fun and love and togetherness and collaboration for 80%. Again, mind blowing, because I thought the harder I work, the better the relationship will be. And she was like, no, this isn't a craft hobby. This is a human being. And, balance that thing a little bit.
There's a word that eludes us, huh? Balance.
Balance.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the unthinkable, because you did in your chapter here. And that's probably the toughest thing either a woman or a man faces, and that's
Absolutely.
the death of their own child.
And this is the toughest thing a marriage faces, right?
And many marriages do not survive.
They don't survive this.
Yeah.
And part of the not surviving is if you didn't prior to this have a habit of incredible communication, which is not just talking, but understanding yourself, having some vocabulary in the marriage to say where you are. Because the other thing is people expect a couple that has lost their child to grieve at the same pace in the same way. Total myth. So one of them is mad at the other because you're not grieving like me. It looks like you're having a life, or it looks like you can't get out of bed. It's different than the way I'm grieving. And so that's where I think all the grief groups and parents who have lost children, all of those groups are really, really important. to know how to deal with this and how to deal, because your own feelings are going to be challenged like nothing else, not like a workplace, not like even an affair, like all of your feelings about yourself, your partner, God, your feelings about God are challenged off the scale. How dare
That's
this
right.
happen? Is there a God? Is there
Right.
anything to help me? Who
Right.
let this happen?
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
a high risk, high relapse time, right? The pain is so great. Give me anything. Give me anything to stop this pain.
I remember when I came into the program, this is kind of funny. I was saying, if my child dies, the deal is off.
Right.
I'm going to get drunk.
Right.
Now, the funny part is I wasn't married and I didn't have a child.
But you knew where your bottom line was.
I knew where my bottom line was. And it was one of the reasons, looking back, that I wasn't married and didn't have children. I was going to place myself at that level of vulnerability.
Right.
And I don't think that's that uncommon. It doesn't get talked about much.
Right.
But
that holding back.
It's the holding back.
This is also why I think there's a value in going to meetings, because when we go to meetings, we get to see the privilege of seeing other people go through hard things. We watch we're 20 years old. We watched a woman across the room go through a divorce. We watch somebody, their child is just diagnosed with something. Their parents die. We see how people deal with the death of their parents. There was a woman in my Saturday morning meeting, and she was actively dying, but she kept coming to the meeting every Saturday. And I thought, all of us are getting a gift. She would come and she would tell us what the oncologist said, and maybe she'd have to miss a little bit, but we could see her dying. And it was like, and she would talk about her fear, and she would talk about her faith and her drifting faith. And it was like, we get to see this. And I think we have seen people whose children died. And it's like, it's a little bit like you want to back up. You don't want to get too close to them in case it's contagious. But it's like the dignity of seeing someone. And then the other lesson that you're seeing is, and they stayed sober.
Yes.
So if anything like that ever happens in my life, that's my goal. That's what I want.
Right. No. I mean, it just compounds the problems. It just compounds them.
Right.
You know?
But I do. I want to see how people, for everything in my life, I wanted to see how people dated. I wanted to see how people dressed. I wanted to see how people asked for a raise. I wanted to see all those lessons showed up in the rooms.
Yeah, we're social animals. That's how we learn.
Right. We're the little monkeys watching the mama monkey.
Watching the other monkeys. That's right.
Like, oh, that's where the ants are. Okay.
Yeah.
That is when you said you talk about the gift of recovery. The gift of recovery is all this stuff, not just that I stopped drinking, but I got to grow.
If I'm drinking, I've closed the curtain on this stuff.
Right.
You know?
And so in a way you feel sorry for people who are doing like moderation, because they're using just enough substance to keep the feelings kind of at bay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not completely growing. They never hit an emotional bottom, so they never get to grow out of that bottom.
Right. Yeah. Or I've substituted something else.
I was going to say, that's where the transferring of addictions comes in.
Yeah. That's what it's there for.
And you need somebody in your life who says, I think that thing you're doing with gummies, that's not just to help you sleep at night. There's something else going on there. Do you want to look at that? That it can be inquiry. Do you want to look at that?
You at the back of your chapter, the end of your chapter, you have some final favorite advice for women about relationships. Can you recall what those are and share them with some of our listeners?
Everything I talk about are gifts of recovery that I have learned from people in recovery. But someone said to me, in a relationship, it is okay to ask for a behavior change, not a personality change. And I didn't know what she meant, but she said, here's the example. You can ask your husband to clean the bathroom and do the laundry. You cannot ask him to care about the dirty bathroom or the laundry, because that's a personality change. And that's what I think a lot of us do. Like, you should care, you should, and it's like, no.
You should be like me.
You should be like me. You should see what I see. No, if I see dirt and I think the fair distribution of tasks is, I would like you to do the laundry on Saturdays. That's fair, as opposed to picking you apart. What's wrong with you that you don't see dirt? What's wrong with you you don't see the laundry on the floor? So that I still to this day have to say to myself, am I asking my husband for a personality change or a behavior change? And sometimes a little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah. The other one, which I loved, I heard a woman in a meeting saying this, and she was saying she was about to get married and remarried. And she said, do you talk to her sponsor? Like, I'm not sure. Is this the right thing? And her sponsor said to her, make a list of all the things he does that annoy you. Write them down. And then ask yourself, can I live with these things? Because they're not going to change. That's him. If you can live with those things, now if there are a couple of things on there, he drinks or he's dishonest, whatever, if you can't live with them, that you got your answer. But if you're willing to live with, he's messy, he doesn't clean the bathroom, he's late a lot. If you can live with those, then this is a person you can live with, probably. Right. And I thought that was really helpful because it didn't expect anybody to be perfect.
2 very, very good pieces of advice. So
I thought so too.
Yeah, we only covered 2 chapters in the book. I had hoped to get to 3, but I knew that relationship thing was going to, we needed to dive into that.
It could be a book.
It can be a book in itself, right? Actually, I'm going to do one on family recovery little later in the summer. So kind of looking forward to that. So Diane, another good session. I thank you very much for taking the time to share this with our listeners.
I am so happy to be part of this, to get to know you and to enter this world of recovery. So thank you for that.
Nice. Yeah, this whole podcasting thing, it's another world in and of itself. So
well, thank you for giving that to us in recovery. Thank you for that gift.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you guys also for listening. I hope it was helpful. And don't forget, I got that new book that's come out. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and learn about this 2-way prayer. God knows if we're going to do relationships, we had better have some help.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you guys for listening. Thanks to you, Diane. I'll see you next week. God bless and keep coming back.